Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be talking about a deck from 2006 called Flariados. Flariados got top 16 at the World Championships. Guy named Steven Silvestro top 16 with it. The same guy actually top 8'd Nationals with the same deck that year. And then it got second in the Seniors World Championships. So definitely some solid finishes for the deck. But let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Eevee. Eevee's got 50 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to fighting. Call for Family is the really good attack on Eevee. So let's just search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it on your bench. Really good. I mean, it finds your Spinaraks and then another Eevee. Getting multiple Eevees down is definitely an important part of this deck. And then the second attack, 2 colorless rear kick for 20. Definitely mediocre in comparison to Call for Family. So you play that to play Flareon EX. So Flareon EX has got 110 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to water. So you play this for Evolutionary Flame. You also attack with it, but Evolutionary Flame is the really good use that you play this card for. So it's a power. When you evolve Flareon from an Eevee, you get to burn and confuse your opponent's active Pokemon. So that's great because it has a lot of synergy with Ariados. Ariados attacks based off the special conditions on your opponent's active. So that's kind of the premise of the deck is you burn, confuse them, and then you hit them for a bunch of damage. But also being able to shut off your opponent's powers is really good. If you're playing against like Meta Knight or something that has a power in the active, being able to hit that and then shut off their powers is a really powerful effect of Evolutionary Flame as well. Flame Screen is the first attack on Flareon EX. For a fire and a color, so you do 30, and then during your next turn, the damage that Flareon EX takes by attacks is reduced by 20. So definitely a good attack. Has some really powerful uses, like against Mewtrick. Mewtrick is the main use that Flame Screen is really good for. You hit them for 30, so you 3-shot a Mew, and then a Mew hits you for 40, minus 20 is 20. So they hit you for 60 damage, and then you 1-shot the Mew. So definitely a solid trade. And even if they decide to go with a Manectric, you trade favorably with a Manectric as well, because a Manectric hits you for 20 4 times before they die, but they still have to hit you for 6 before you're even dead. So yeah, you trade very favorably there as well. And then Heat tackles the other attack. Definitely a good attack as well. So fire 2 colors does 70, and then Flareon EX does 10 damage to itself. Really good for finishing stuff off, like you Flame Screen once, and then you Heat tackle to add 100. There's a lot of Pokemon that have 100 HP in this format. You also play one Espeon EX. So Espeon EX has 100 HP, 110 HP rather, sorry, and then free retreat and a weakness to psychic. So the power is called Devo Flash. When you evolve Espeon, you can pick one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and remove the highest stage evolution card from that Pokemon and put it in your opponent's hand. So really good if your opponent like overcommits with a rare candy Pidgeot turn 1. You can just go like Devo Flash, Rockets admin, and then they lose that. So really cool effect that you can have with that card. And honestly, like with Ariados has an attack that lets you control your opponent's board a lot. You can make some really cool plays with Devo Flash. It's called Spider Trap, and we'll get to it in a sec, but it just lets you like manipulate your opponent's board. And when you have that board manipulation, Devo Flash in combination with that can make for a really, really strong board control. Okay, so starting off with 4 Spinarak in the Ariados line. So 50 HP, a single retreat, and then a weakness to Psychic. Stun Poison is the first attack. Really good attack on a basic. So for 1 grass, flip a coin of heads. The defending Pokemon is now paralyzed and poisoned. So, I mean, honestly, having a paralyzed attack on a basic is really good, first of all, because you get to paralyze, and then next turn when you can find the evolution, you can start attacking. But getting the poison is like almost better than damage, I think, because you initially, like if it, say it was like 10 damage and paralyzed, there's a Growlithe that has that. This is better than that, because if they're poisoned, they take the 10 damage anyway. It might be more than 10 damage, and they can't use powers. So starting a Spinarak against like a Jirachi can really slow your opponent down. I mean, if you hit a heads on a stun poison, poisoning a Jirachi means they can't do anything next turn because they're paralyzed. And then even the turn after, they can't really do anything because they're poisoned, so they can't even use the power. So really, really powerful attack. Pierce 2 for 20, definitely meh. I'm probably going to be stun poisoning more than I'm going to be piercing. Piercing is definitely a mediocre attack. But you play 4 Ariados. So before we get into Ariados, I'm just going to talk about this card because I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions about it. So this card was drawn by Mitsuhiro Arata. So Mitsuhiro Arata is one of the most talented artists of the Pokemon TCG. He's probably my personal favorite artist. He just like has so much dedication to his work, and like the backgrounds for all of the cards that he does are like so good. He was at Dallas Regionals and he signed this particular card for me. I'll see if I can get it out of the sleeve so you can get a better look at it there. But yeah, he signed that card, and then he drew a little Spinarak on there too. So kind of kind of a cool part about that card. Honestly, I'm just fangirling because I love Mitsuhiro so much. And when he like signed this card, I was like, oh my god, I love you. You're my favorite. But yeah, so really, really good artist. Honestly, definitely the best. But Ariados, so 70 HP, single retreat, and a weakness to Psychic. Reactive Poison is the first attack. So it does 10, and then it does 30 more damage for each special condition affecting the defended Pokemon. So a lot of synergy there with Flareon. You Flareon, and then you can Reactive Poison for 70. And then if they flip Tails on a burn, that's 90. And if you have a full Flame in play, that's 110, which is like a lot of damage for a single energy. Spider Trap is really good as well. So the defending Pokemon is asleep and poisoned, and before you do that effect, you can switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. So that has some synergy with Reactive Poison as well. If you need to knock out something really big, you can Spider Trap it. Hopefully it remains asleep, but even if it doesn't, if they don't have like a switch out, like on a Blastoise, you can Spider Trap it, and then with the 3 special conditions, you're doing 100 damage with Reactive Poison, and that's just like a lot of damage. So you Spider Trap it, and the Blastoise numbers work like this. So you bring a Blastoise up a Spider Trap, it goes 10, 20, 30. If they flip Tails on the burn plus a Reactive Poison, that's a knockout. Or honestly, if they flip Tails on the sleep, but it doesn't matter because you can't be confused in sleep. But either way, you knock out a Blastoise in 2 turns with Spider Trap. So really, really good effect on that. And then you also play a Lapras. So Lapras has got 80 HP, 2 retreat, and a weakness to lightning. So the power is support navigation. Once in your turn, when you bench Lapras, you can search your deck for a supporter card, put it in your hand. Just really consistent. I mean, you don't play any Pokemon search other than Dual Ball, but the Dual Ball lets you find a Lapras if you're like, well, I got a Dual Ball in my hand, I got nothing else. At least you're drawing cards if you flip a heads. Okay, so getting into some of the trainers. So starting with Energy Removal 2, really interesting card in this deck. So Energy Removal 2 is essentially a Crushing Hammer. Flip a coin of heads, choose an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon, and discard it. So just really good for setting them back. You can Spider Trap them, bring something active that they don't want active, and then Energy Removal 2, something on their bench that they were attacking with. And now they can't just go like attach retreat if they wake up from sleep. They have to find an energy for that other Pokemon, and then they also have to find a way to switch out of the active. So definitely a really powerful board manipulation card with Spider Trap. And honestly, Energy Removal 2 just like keeps the pace of the game in your favor. You attack for so cheap with Flareon and Espeon and Ariados, and when your opponent has multiple energy attacks, and Energy Removal heads can be the difference between them attacking 2 turns in a row and them missing an attack. You place 4 Super Scoop Up as well. Super Scoop Up has a lot of uses in this deck. The main thing you're going to be using Super Scoop Up for is reusing your Flareons. So you can have 2 Eevees on a bench, evolve one into a Flareon, and then if you hit a Scoop Up heads, you bring the Flareon up and then evolve it into a Flareon again the next turn. So that's a really cool use for Super Scoop Up. Being able to double Devo Flash can actually be really good as well, especially against like Dragtrode. So Dragtrode has to manually evolve into a Dragonite. And if you hit a Super Scoop Up heads on your Espeon, being able to go Devo Flash the Dragonite, bring it back. Devo Flash the Dragonair, bring it back. They can't just candy out the Dragonite. They just don't get Dark Trance next turn. And depending on how they put their energy on the board, that can be really, really bad for them. So that's really cool too. You can also heal Ariados with it. I mean, it's not a great use for Super Scoop Up, to be honest, but there are situations where healing Ariados is good. And you can also use Super Scoop Up on a Lapras to support navigation if you need to do that to be consistent. So 4 Dual Ball. This is the Pokemon search in this deck. The basic Pokemon search, rather, I should say. So flip 2 coins for each head, search your deck for a basic Pokemon card, and show it to your opponent, put it in your hand. So great for finding your Eevee, Spinarak, and Lapras. I mean, that's the only basic Pokemon search that you have other than Call for Family on the Eevee. And that's kind of one of the suspect parts of this deck, to be honest, because like Mentor is such a consistent card in this format, and so many decks play Mentor, so they have consistent search for their basic Pokemon, but this deck doesn't really have that, so you're kind of flipping coins. But at least if you're flipping coins, you got 12 cards that you're flipping coins on. So, and your opponent's flipping coins too, because they're going to be asleep. This is just a coin flippy deck. Everyone's just going to be flipping coins when you play this deck. Okay, so getting into stadiums. So 3 Battle Frontier. Battle Frontier is a great stadium, probably one of the most powerful stadiums in this entire format. So Battle Frontier, each player's normal type evolved Pokemon, dark type evolved Pokemon, and metal type evolved Pokemon can't use any Poke Powers or Poke Bodies. So that affects a lot of matchups. Any matchup that plays Pidgeot. So a lot of stage 2 decks play Pidgeot. Shut off. Can't use that. Dark Dragtrode also uses Dark Dragonite and Dark Electrode. That's a really essential part of their game. Can't use that either. Rocklock. Both of the bodies on Rocklock can really mess you up because sand damage, if they de-evolve all your Pokemon, I mean, first of all, if they de-evolve you, they're kind of stupid because then you get to use your Flareons and Espeons again. But they do get that damage on your bench with sand damage automatically because you only play stage 1s. So that can be kind of a detriment that can set you back a lot. But you shut that off. And then you also shut off Ampharos's body, which puts more damage on you when you evolve as well. So you shut all of that off. And then you also shut off Meta Knight, which is another really powerful deck in the format. Meta Knight, all the Pokemon in that are Delta, so they're electric and metal. They're lightning and metal, and you shut that off as well. So being able to shut off so many things when you're also putting special conditions on your opponent's Pokemon. So you can like drop a Battle Frontier, Spider Trap a Dragonite versus Meta Knight, bring it up, and then they can't use whatever the power is that brings energy back. So when they can't use that, even if they have a stadium bump, they can go like, okay, well, I found an answer to the Battle Frontier. You're like, wow, that's really too bad, man, because the poison's power that you, or the Pokemon's power that you want to use is poison now. So that's kind of awkward. But yeah, Battle Frontier, it just sticks with the power locking in this deck. You play so many special conditions that you're locking your opponent's powers a lot. And Battle Frontier kind of just sticks with that regimen. So 1 full flame as well. Put 4 damage counters instead of 2 on each burn Pokemon between turns. So you get a burn buff from Flareon. And then the special condition burn can't be removed by evolving or de-evolving burn Pokemon. So that's actually really useful with Flareon. You can de-evolve them and then they keep burn. And then depending on how your number manipulation is gone, that can be really bad for your opponent because they can flip a tails and then get knocked out out of nowhere. And also forcing your opponent to not just find an evolution, forcing them to find a switch to get out of burn is definitely really powerful as well. So you play 1 Giant Stump as well. Giant Stump has a few uses. The main use in this deck that it's going to be used for is getting rid of liabilities. So Lapras has 2 retreat, so it can get stuck in the active if your opponent has a way to bring it up, and that can just be a pain in the butt. Definitely don't want to deal with that. Usually want a Giant Stump, get that guy out of the way. But also you play EX Pokemon, so whenever if your opponent's playing like Desert Ruins, that can stack up really quick over time, especially if you can't find a stadium to answer it. And then you're potentially losing the game. Like a lot of the times, if your opponent's playing Desert Ruins, you're going to have 2 EX Pokemon on the bench. And if you're not hitting your scoop ups, it can potentially just be a game loss if they just like hit some spread damage and then you just lose 4 prizes in a turn. But Giant Stump, if you can find a Giant Stump, you can get rid of those liabilities and then play a longer game and not have to worry about, oh, well, I wasn't able to find an answer for Desert Ruins for a few turns and now I'm going to lose 4 prizes. You don't have to worry about that with Giant Stump. Also really good against Queendom. When you Giant Stump a Queendom, they attack based off their evolved Pokemon on their bench, and usually they have all evolved Pokemon on their bench, so setting them back that 20 damage can be a big deal as well. Okay, so getting into the supporter cards, you play 4 Professor Elm's Training Method. Really consistent card, finds your Ariadoses and finds your Eeveelutions. Not the Eevees, but the Espeons and the Flareons. Just helps you be consistent. I mean, all you need to be really doing is you find an Ariados, you find an Energy, you find a Flareon, you're hitting them for 70. So that's just it's not a lot of requirements. It's a single energy and 2 stage 1 Pokemon. And Professor Elm's Training Method just helps you find those stage 1 Pokemon consistently. So you also play 4 Mary's Request. Honestly, this has kind of been a really like weird supporter card in this deck. Draw a card. If you don't have any stage 2 evolved Pokemon to play, draw 3 cards. So essentially it's like a Charon. So you just like draw 3. But the thing about Mary's Request that I don't really like get is there's other supporters that are like really better in this format. So I'm not a huge fan of 4, but I guess it makes a lot of sense because you have so many resources that you like don't want to just like burn. You want to keep them in your hands so that you can have pop-off turns. So when your Mary's requesting for 3, you just stack big hands. And honestly, when you're spider trapping, your opponent doesn't always have an answer. Sometimes they have an answer, but not always. And when you Mary's request a bunch, it lets you stack a fat hand so that when they do have that answer of like, oh, Stadium and this Pokemon and a switch, you can just go like Super Scoop Up, evolve the Flareon, Energy Removal 2, Battle Frontier, bump your Stadium back. Like it just lets you have those big answer turns when your opponent does find the resources to answer your big turns. Played 2 Rockets Min as well. So Rockets Min is a staple in this format. Both players shuffle their hand to their deck and then they draw for their prize cards. So really good card. I mean, being able to disrupt your opponent's hand is really good, especially when you have the option to control their board if you want. And the reason you play 2 is this deck is usually really aggressive. There's a lot of stage 2 decks in this format, and the stage 2 decks do tend to be slower than the stage 1 deck. So being able to Rockets Admin your opponent is great, but you're not using it that often in the late game because you do reactive poison for 70 on turn 2 potentially. So you don't always have those slow starts where you're going down on prices. The deck's really aggressive, so you do go up on prices a lot of the time, and that's why you only play 2. So 2 Copycat as well. Shuffle your hand to your deck and then draw from the number of cards for your opponent's hand. And it's just a really good supporter when you're trying to find those big combo turns of like Battle Frontier, Energy Removal 2, Super Scoop Up, Energy Attachment. Like you just need to be... There's a lot of like moving parts in this deck. Like you need to be evolving Flareon all the time to be getting the really powerful attack of reactive poison. I mean, Copycat just lets you hit those big hands where you're like, oh, cool, I hit the Flareon or I hit the Super Scoop Up. And you also play 1 Scott. So Scott is a great card. Search your deck for 3 cards in any combination of supporter cards, stadium cards, and then show them to your opponent, put it in your hand. So the main use for Scott, and the best way that I like to use Scott, is you grab 1 other supporter with it, and then you grab 2 stadiums, especially in Battle Frontier. So you can grab like 2 Battle Frontiers and let's say like a Rockets Admin or something. So you drop the Battle Frontier, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to lock you. And if your opponent has an answer to it, they have the stadium bump. Cool, great. They bump the stadium. And then if they have a Pidgeot in play or something, they're probably going to use it for another stadium. So you have that stadium bump and then you Rockets Admin them so that they can't have that quick search to just have the stadium. You can disrupt them and then also win the stadium war, at least for a little while. And that's why Scott is really powerful. It lets you have a leg up in the stadium war. And that can be really important in this format, especially with how powerful Battle Frontier is. Okay, so getting into the energy. So you play 4 multi-energy. Multi-energy, when multi-energy is attached to a Pokemon, it's every energy. But if there's another special energy attached to that Pokemon, multi-energy is colorless. And you don't play any other special energy. So the only way multi gets shut off is if you put another multi on the same Pokemon. And I don't recommend doing that. That's a bad play. Don't do that. But multi-energy lets you attack with Espeon, lets you attack with Flareon, and lets you use Spider Trap with Ariados. You can also react to poison with it, but it's just like, it keeps you having options for your attackers. You can attack with Flareon whenever you want. Espeon is a really good attacker in certain situations. And it just like lets you mix up your attackers if you'd like to. You play 6 grass as well. So seems kind of high when you're only attacking for 1 energy, especially when you're super scooping up the energy potentially. But having that high grass just means that you can hit that stun poison turn 1 and that early reactive poison or spider trap. I mean, you want to be really aggressive with this deck, and when you play a higher energy count, it just means that you're always hitting that 1 energy so that you can be attacking with Ariados. And then you do play 3 fires as well. So the fires are for Flareon, but both the grass and the fire can be used as like filler. So Espeon and Flareon both have colorless costs on their attack. So being able to have that extra energy to stack on that Pokemon so that you can attack with it later is really good. And honestly, finding an energy early is pretty important with Eevee as well. If you're not able to find an energy turn 1 with your Eevee, that's a wasted Call for Family, when Call for Family is a really powerful attack when you don't play a ton of basic Pokemon search in this deck. But yeah, this has been Flariados from 2006. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get to them. But thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.